My wife and I just got back from the Democratic debate, and I want to give my impressions on the Democratic debate itself, and I kind of want to make a criticism of CNN itself. CNN sucks. Outright, CNN sucks. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you enjoy this content, you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please consider supporting this content by liking this video, sharing this video, and you can always help through PayPal or Patreon. Even a dollar helps. Like I said, we just got back from the debate, and I want to give my impressions right now before anything else takes place. Meaning, I want to give my first snapshot impression on the debate itself. First, CNN sucks. I'm starting there because it has to be said. CNN has a debate, a presidential debate, where the people are going to take over in regards to the policy of this nation. And the only thing CNN could do is food fights. Hey, this guy said you suck. You have anything to say about it? This other guy said you suck. You have anything to say about it? And essentially turn this into just a fight between people on the stage. More so for Sanders, because oftentimes CNN frames questions when they were talking to Sanders in these really contorted ways. Hey, you're trying to provide health care. Is this going to incentivize immigrants to come across the border to use that health care? Hey, and so example, talking about Medicare for all, not necessarily in the benefits of the system, but more so talking about it in the context of, oh, you're going to knock 180 million people off their health care. All of those people are going to have health care, and they're going to have health care in perpetuity, because you're not going to have this thing where they're losing their health care in the same way that jobs try to find health care over and over again. And I mean, it's the wording of it, the way they talk about it. And it's not just that, where there's the immigration issue, even the way CNN will set up attacks on Sanders and his plans. Like, it's a really weird way that CNN was doing this. And it was one of those things where everybody in the room was like, what? Like, just some of the ways they were asking the question. They asked a first response question of whether or not this country should be the first one to do a nuclear strike, and whether or not you should take off the table the United States will be a first strike country. Understand what they're asking. Will the United States strike a country with a nuclear weapon? And should that be taking off the table? And is that a good idea that you're taking it off the table? I mean, these are the right-wing questions that they're asking. At one point, Bernie Sanders tells Jake Tapper, that's a right-wing answer, or that's a right-wing question, and they're going to be advertising this right-wing question on a commercial break. His point to him was, you're framing this stuff in ways that is dramatically unfair. So CNN sucks. It was obviously apparent to anybody that was watching that debate. First part. Second part, Senator Warren did an amazing job. Look, if you look at my original expectations of the debate, my expectations were right. They were dead on right. The political acumen is on point. The catch here is Warren became Sanders' attack dog. There were various parts in the debate where Sanders would get into these fights back and forth because CNN would allow multiple people on stage to pivot to attack Sanders because they were just talking about his plan. Warren, because many of Warren's plans are tethered to Sanders, ends up getting into fights with everybody on stage also, with Marianne Williamson every so often adding herself into these debates. Sanders has a tendency to do policy and to focus on policy to the detriment of everything else, even in the context of a debate. There were various points in the debate where he did point to people in order to kind of make his point forcefully to them. At one point, telling Tim Ryan, I wrote the damn plan. How are you going to tell me what was in the plan? And another point, saying it wasn't Hickenlooper, it was to Delaney, the guy whose staff is trying to get him to drop out. I've been to Canada. They supplied health care for everybody. Don't tell me that this is something that's impossible to do. So he gets into fights, and he's holding his own extremely well. However, Warren was the person that stood out tonight. And I strongly suspect when the polling comes out, Warren is going to look extremely strong in the poll, because Warren, in many respects, was combining explaining the policies of the stuff while simultaneously attacking people who were going after the policy. So at one point, she tells Delaney, why are you even a Democrat? And that gets the largest applause of the night. And I guarantee you that's going to be the standout thing that shows. Maybe Sanders saying, I wrote the damn plan. But if not that, the attack on Delaney of, why are you a Democrat? Like, you ran in the presidential race in the Democratic Party only to talk about things that you can't do. Now, that attack got the entire room in applause. That attack set the room off. And many of the way she was going about explaining her policies and the way she was defending the policy, it worked. It worked. I mean, be honest, if you're looking at that, Elizabeth Warren did an amazing job in that debate, and I strongly suspect that the polling is going to show out that she did an amazing job. It's not that Sanders did bad. Sanders did perfectly fine. And when I was looking back over footage of it, I was like, yeah, he was strong in this debate. The issue wasn't so much that he wasn't strong in the debate. He defended the way he needed to defend it. He got across what he needed to get across. He did all of the points that he needed to hit. It's just, I think the difference is Warren was combining it with attacks. Meaning, telling somebody, why are you a Democrat, is an amazing put down, while simultaneously advocating for the position that you're advocating for. Doing both gets you more bang for your buck. Look, why are commercials the way commercials are? Why is there a small M&M that's running across the screen? That's not a real thing. M&M can come out and say, our product is candy and it tastes good and it's chocolatey. But they don't do that. They have a little figure that's out there running in front of the movie screen. Why do all of these commercials? Why does a car insurance commercial have an emu staring at a window to sell cars? Their thing is to stick it in your head so when you walk away from it, you may not necessarily remember everything that they told you. You just remember there was an emu, there was a commercial, the commercial stuck in my head, it was this company. The whole point is to have something sticks in your head that associates this kind of memory of them. It's not even done in an overly conscious way. You don't even need to be fully paying attention to the commercial. It just needs to be something that's distinctive enough that stays in your head that the next time this particular thing, this need in your life comes up, that comes up. My point is, the debates are the same. When you're going after the candidates, advocating your position is perfectly fine, but in many times when they're attacking you in debates, sometimes it's the food fights, it's the put downs, it's the zingers, it's those things that sometimes bubble up above the surface. The thing is, if you're giving a zinger for something that is a real policy proposal, you're doing God's work, and you shouldn't be afraid to do that. In many respects, Sanders wasn't afraid to do that, and Medicare for All was his strongest suit. But Elizabeth Warren did amazing in this debate. I have to give her credit. She did amazing. My suspicion was that her and Sanders were going to some degree be working in tandem against a bunch of other corporate Democrats that don't agree with her and Sanders. And that is literally what took place. And in many respects, where attacks on Sanders were leveled, Elizabeth Warren got involved and instigated herself into it in order to defend those attacks on Sanders. Because really, the attacks on Sanders were really attacks on Medicare for All, which she has at this point attached herself to. It's a fascinating debate to watch. Marianne Williamson at one point even turned and says, "Why are you Democrats?" She screams, "Why are you Democrats?" And she's talking to Hickenlooper and the other people on stage who are essentially saying, we can't do X. We can't do big things. We can't go back to the moon. We can't pass Medicare again. We can't pass Social Security again. We can't pass the Civil Rights Act again. We can't do big things. They're having this debate on school loans, on a college thing. And it's like, get rid of the debt. Get rid of this suppression that is on the backs of this public. And Sanders and Warren are arguing forcefully for that particular position, making this argument that that is not just for those individuals that are involved in the process. That is something that is a depression on the entire society. And you're talking about unleashing the creative might of all of these people in the United States that gets the opportunity to go to school, and not just the opportunity to go to school, but gets the debt off of their backs. People who can't start families, people who can't start businesses. And we're making the point that you can have a different world. The first thing that you have to do, though, is conceive of that different world. There's some people on that debate stage that were full bore on this notion of we can do big things. Elizabeth Warren said something, and Sanders piggybacked on it, that was astonishing. Elizabeth Warren made the point that a wealth tax, 2%. And she went down the list of all the things that charging 2% on the uber rich, everything above $50 million, would pay for. It's astonishing. And I turned to my wife, if 2% pays for that, what about 50 cents? Fuck it, 99%. Why don't we have a maximum tax in the first place? I mean, you're talking about getting rid of homelessness. You're talking about healthcare and all these things. Do I want this person to be a billionaire, or do I want roads, infrastructure? Do I want people not being homeless? Do I want people to have healthcare? Yeah. Between that guy having the money just sitting in their bank account and those things taking place in a society, I want those things. Warren is not that far, though. But even the 2% thing and the amount of stuff that it covers and pays for gives you this notion of the ungodly amount of wealth that is being accrued at the top 1%. Her and Sanders hit that point home to a national audience for the first time, I think, in my lifetime. It was an astonishing thing to watch. It's not so much that Warren is my candidate, but I can be honest and give credit where credit is due. She did a really good job. There's also something to be said for the political casting that she's taking, that whether she believes it entirely or not, is almost secondary to the point that she is saying it to a national audience. And she's making this argument alongside Sanders booing him as he makes this argument. I have never seen that on national television from the standpoint of the American audience, where they're leading candidates advocating for positions in that way. They did a little bit about foreign policy, but CNN is a right-wing channel, and the way that they talk about that stuff is so bizarre. Interesting debate. More interesting than I thought it was going to be. And yeah, the right-wing Democrats just took the opportunity to try to attack Sanders, and by definition attacking Warren. Warren defends Sanders, and by definition defends herself. And in an odd way, the two are essentially rebuking the other people that are on stage. It's a really interesting thing to watch. If Sanders and Warren ever join forces, they're going to win the primaries. I mean, it's a forceful argument that both of them were making. They weren't sheepish. They weren't hedging at all. And look, I don't know. I know Elizabeth Warren has been somewhat wishy-washy on the Medicare for All thing, but at this point, she seems to be all in. I mean, I guess the question, what you find out is if you get the opportunity to question her further on it and see how far she really goes into it. But she tethered herself to Sanders in this particular debate. And the attacks that were leveled on Sanders, in some part, she took it as if they were being leveled at her. And she was forceful in her rebukes. And in some respects, more so than Sanders, even though both were fighting strong for Medicare for All. This was a really good debate in the sense of a national audience getting the argument for Medicare for All and having it being fought for in an unabashed way to a national audience against corporate Democrats who are essentially saying we can't do big things anymore. Think about that. Medicare currently exists, and expanding it, these guys are acting like that's impossible to do. That's impossible. Bernie Sanders told him, don't tell me that it's impossible to do it when we were able to do it when we created the Medicare program. I mean, somebody really made the really good point that, you know, the federal government comes out and says, hey, we want to make sure that every American can get school. And so we're going to open elementary schools and high schools to everybody for free. And the Beto comes out and says, we shouldn't stop and kick out the education from 70 million kids who are getting paid for their education. That's kind of what they're saying about the healthcare thing. And even the way CNN is talking about it. You're going to kick 180 million people off their insurance plan. What are you talking about? We're talking about all of those people being covered. That's what we're talking about. And you're acting as if those people are losing their insurance. Those people are losing their insurance card, yes, but those people are getting insurance that is going to be infinitely better and paying less for that insurance. And I have to pay at the point of sale. Now, if you're going to talk about that, you can also talk about it from that direction. CNN is making a choice in the framing and the language that they use to discuss the healthcare plan. This is kind of my point. So, those are my impressions of it. Sanders did well. Warren did exceptional. Yeah. Once I get the opportunity, I'm going to slice up some videos so we can see the video itself. Delaney should drop out. Honestly, Delaney is the same corporate Democrat that's on that stage 16 other times. Gravel could have taken his spot, and it would have been a hell of a lot more interesting debate. But instead, we get Delaney. Williamson won the debate. Sheepdog and fake progressive Warren did good. Everyone else need to quit. They have no shot. Agreed. Kills for a living. Agreed. I agree with you. Agreed. And I don't think Williamson won the debate. Williamson was interesting. Williamson, look, man, I told you I like Williamson. Every so often she says things that are absolutely true. And in the debate, she would do the same thing. She was talking about reparations, which I completely agree with her on the reparations stuff. And she goes further, and she's like, why are some of you people Democrats? And the reason she was putting them down like this, because her point is, you guys are in this contest just to tell people that you have no ability to get big things accomplished? Yeah, quit the Democratic Party. This party should be something different. She even goes further and say the Democratic Party will suffer for not dealing with the issues that affect real human beings. Yeah, Marianne Williamson would say things that were true. This was an interesting debate. It was an interesting debate. Fortunately, there are going to be a lot of people who won't be in the next debate, fortunately. So, yeah, there's that. So, CNN sucks. Sanders did a great job holding his own for being attacked by multiple sources, including from the host itself. And Warren knocked it out the park. She did a really good job. Give credit where credit's due. So, I wrote the damn bill. Yeah, I got, it's funny, right here. I even have that queued up, right here. This guy is a whipping boy. This is the same person, Tim Ryan, that got put down by Tulsi Gabbard, if you remember, where Tulsi Gabbard essentially crushed him. And he's telling Bernie Sanders, there's no way you know that, Sanders. There's no way you know that, Sanders. This is a back and forth when these guys are talking about Medicare for all.
Medicare for All is comprehensive. It covers all health care needs for senior citizens. It will finally include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses.
But you don't know
Second
that.
of all,
you don't know that,
second
Bernie.
of all,
We'll come to you in a second,
I do know, and I
Congressman.
wrote the damn bill.
When he's attacked, one of his strongest suits is counterattacks. Because if you notice, he doesn't really go after anybody. But when he gets gruff and annoyed, those are some of his best moments. And I got to be honest, even in this debate, those were some of his best moments. There was one point where Sanders is like, I get sick and tired of having that. And he goes into this argument from that point. It's a strong positioning point when you start the argument off that way. He did good. Sanders did quite well in this debate. And I tell you this, he did a hell of a lot better in this debate than he did in the first debate. So there's that. But don't shirk Warren in this. I mean, she did well. I was looking for the footage where Warren told him, I don't know why you're running in the Democratic Party. He's like, why on earth will you go into a Democratic Party primary only to tell people what they can't do? And that's an amazing put down. And Delaney was like, he was flustered by it. He was embarrassed by it because it's so brutal and so true. Warren Kamala Delaney, yeah, she did. She did. She really did. Bernie, Kamala, and CNN. Yes, it did. So bad they presented a panic button. Bernie won because Warren's a fake pootie tang, and we all know this. Fair enough, but look, whether Warren is real or fake is secondary to whether Warren or Bernie Sanders won the debate. And talking in the sense of won the debate. When I say won the debate, I need to be specific. I just mean the thing that they are going to replicate and is going to stick in people's heads is Warren putting down Delaney, telling him that what's the point in you running in the Democratic Party to tell people what they can't do? I guarantee you that is going to be the thing that gets replicated. Bernie Sanders telling him I wrote the damn bill is also going to get replicated. CNN made an entire video out of it already. Yeah, that already. And by the way, this argument that this somehow hurts union members, this is the most nonsense argument. Union members negotiate away wages because they negotiate for health care. If you take that off the table, well, health care is just kind of a guaranteed right, then they don't necessarily have to negotiate for wages away anymore. Their wages is something that they can essentially maintain, or they can negotiate those wages away from something else. This notion that you are somehow hurting unions by providing health care for each and every person in this country is utter nonsense. It's nonsense. But it didn't stop Ryan from making the argument anyway. Nor did it stop CNN from setting Ryan up so he can make that argument against Sanders. This entire debate was CNN going from one candidate to the next saying, this person said this about you. You said Bernie Sanders' plan is unworkable and is trash. Would you like to elaborate on that? It was that. CNN sucks. I keep saying it. CNN sucks. And they are not given an honest arbiter in the way that they give this. They have a bias, and that bias is overt and is showing like nobody's business, whether it's in their polls or whether it's in the way they question Sanders and the people of his campaign. And I love the fact that Fayez was willing to go on CNN and trash them to their face, because ultimately that's what needs to happen. And Sanders pointing out that that's a Republican talking point is something that's necessary. It is important to point out to the American public that they are not asking questions in a fair way and that they're not being a fair arbiter in this process. Sanders knew he was going to have to take on the media. That's what this looks like. That's literally what this is. Donald Smead, thank you, Donald Smead. Extreme Chucka. Oh, yeah, Extreme Chuckawalla, Warren, Kamala, Delaney, Bernie, Kamala at CNN so bad they pressed the panic button. Well, you saw Bernie trying to say, can I finish my point? Can I finish my point? And they wouldn't let him finish his point. Do I have that video? I don't know if I have that video up. I was trying to find access to the debate. We just watched it live. And so I didn't have the video uploads, but I wanted to get my impression before we got too far into it. Yeah, I wanted to get my impression before we got too far into it. But it was interesting. Let's see. Tim Ryan is not my favorite politician of all time, Marcus Holbert. Why? Because he can get beat up by all sorts of people. Yeah, that is funny to me too. Buttigieg didn't say anything that sucked. No, he didn't. It was just nothing. He made decent points, but in the background of most part. It's like he made decent points, but it was like decent points that didn't really mean anything. It's like he spoke well. And that's what you leave the debates thinking. He spoke well. I left this debate thinking a few things. That Beto O'Rourke needs to drop out. Sorry. That Delaney is a waste of space. That Elizabeth Warren does amazingly well at explaining policy. She just does. I don't know if it's because she used to be a professor or what. But when she explains it, she nails it down. Sanders does a really good job at hitting on policy points. But he has a better point of getting a little bit of emotional tether to the policy point that he's making, with a certain amount of rage associated with it of, this should not be taking place in our society. And we need to go and we need to change this. Like, that's part of one of his strongest suits. It's this righteous indignation associated with what is taking place. In addition to the policy. I mean, it's a little bit of both. Warren has aped his policies. And maybe it's because she doesn't do well with the connecting it to the kind of emotional center of injustice Sanders does, so people focus more on that as opposed to the policy thing. I'm not quite sure. But either way, but most of the debate were just attacks on their position. I mean, Marianne Williamson made some really good points, but I think the strongest point is, why are you guys in the Democratic Party? I gotta be honest, that's the thing that stuck with me more than anything else, because in my honest estimate, it is probably the truest question that was answered all night, and it was the one that flustered Delaney the most. Why are you a Democrat? There's another party called the Republican Party that you could totally be a part of. Marianne should drop, but she made a great case for reparations. She did make a great case for reparations. We've had conversations on this show about reparations, and you guys know my position. And I heard her make that case, and I was like, she's right. I thought she's right. There was nothing else I could say. She's right. We can quibble about the cash, we can quibble about the amount, we can quibble about all that stuff. But she schooled Don Lemon on reparations, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And no reparations is divisive. No, it is divisive. I agree with you. My position on reparations is, I think it's necessary, even though it'll never happen. Nor should you push for it. And I know that sounds like I'm saying two things at once, but I'm not. My political position is that reparations is right. Reparations is owed. And I think the case that Marianne Williamson made was fucking awesome. The problem with Marianne Williamson's argument is that Marianne Williamson's argument, even though it may be technically right, is not necessarily shared by whites in this country. And you will create a line in this country, and you will fail as a candidate if you try to push it. 15% of the public is for reparations. The overwhelming majority is not. So even though her case was on point, it's a case that is not necessarily going to be supported. So I hope you understand my point. Both things are true at once. John Hickenlooper is a liar. I live in Colorado, and he is a straight-up liar. He is not a progressive. He has also fracked the crap out of our state, Laura Glenny. Thank you for saying that. Let's see. Bernie set the stage for the discussion tonight. Yes, but I don't think he won. This really isn't a winner. It's kind of a format. Only losers need to drop out. So yes and no. Bernie did set the stage because the entire debate was, do you agree with Bernie Sanders? Until it got to like immigration and that stuff. But once the policy positions of schools and healthcare was all Sanders. And that was like the first hour. So it's just, do you agree with Sanders? And why don't you agree with Sanders? And what's wrong with Sanders' plan? And that type of stuff. The secondary part, the format of the debate doesn't allow you to really have a conversation. I mean, it's like 10, 15 seconds where they want you to kind of make a point about something. What can you answer in 10 to 15 seconds on something that is going to give the public information about any level of governance? I mean, you can get a snapshots to try to tear at your opponent. So the format doesn't necessarily allow itself to be good. Not to mention CNN, and CNN is trash. But I think Elizabeth Warren won this debate if you were looking at it from the standpoint of a winner of the debate. She did well. Look, I was shocked at how well she did. And I have done multiple shows putting a knife in Elizabeth Warren. So it's not that I light up inside to say it. I don't light up inside to say it at all. It's more so it's just true. It's just true. She did really well. I can't take it from her. Megan Morales. Also, apparently, Hickenlooper drank fracked water. That's funny. Cody Fullen. It was about Sanders. Yes, it was all about Sanders. Yeah. Oh, until you got to immigration. That's when it gets a little different. But yes. Education for all part of reparations. The idea that Sanders is against that is wrong. It's not that Sanders is against reparations. The issue is that it's divisive. And that if you're trying to make an argument about, for example, the gap between blacks and whites in response to wealth is 12-1. Sanders' plan to get rid of college debt, it drops that down to 5-1. That's not reparations, no, but the people at the bottom of the income spectrum clearly benefit in an outsized way. In such an outsized way that it drops the wealth gap from 5-1 between blacks and whites. Now, is it reparations? No, it's not. But are you having an outsized influence based on policy that is affecting the lower end of the economic spectrum, many of which are African Americans? Clearly, since it's going from 12-1 to 5-1. I guess my point is, you can make policy that is not necessarily reparations that still almost hits at what reparations is doing. I mean, look, reparations has multiple functions, but one of those is paying back labor that was used, that was never paid for. I mean, that's her argument. And I think that argument is right. I mean, you can have wealth that is 100 years and is putting from family member to family member to family member that goes all throughout history and accrues wealth. But we're saying that the labor that these guys worked, that's not worth anything. And that the fact that they worked it and they were breaking their backs to work it on behalf of a country, that country should never have to pay for that labor. And her point is, well, that's not really fair. I mean, wealth from the rich gets ported through time. Why not wealth from people who worked? Why not that getting ported through time? And if you do the 40 acres and a mule thing, the thing that you said that you were going to give, then it comes out to a certain amount. Yeah, I think that makes sense. But politically, it's toxic. Politically, it's toxic. Warren did okay. Bernie seemed strong. Yes, Bernie did seem stronger today. He did seem stronger today. Like, from the last debate, I think he seemed stronger. Do I think he seemed stronger than Warren? I didn't see that. But again, I think the problem is, at various points, I wanted him to put down the person who was going after him. In some cases, he did. Meaning, Delaney continuously tried to have a fight with Sanders, in which case Sanders continuously hit Delaney. But CNN continuously allowed multiple people on the stage. This is why I kept saying I want more lefties on the stage. Because I want more people pushing back on the nonsense that people like Delaney and Hickenlooper is going to put out. Sanders did seem strong tonight. I just thought Warren also seems strong, if not stronger. All right. Delaney and Marianne slayed the corporate Democrats. You got to give Warren credit. Like, come on. You got to be fair. 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 There's no way you're going to say Williamson and Sanders, but not Warren. It looks like you're trying too hard to exclude her, which I'm not a huge Warren fan. I like her domestic policies, but I at least should give her credit where credit is due. She did a good job tonight. She did a good job. Warren was only okay. Balthazar, fair enough. Balthazar, fair enough. Warren was only okay. Warren was only okay. All right, I'm going to end this. Yeah, those are my impressions of the debate, man. CNN sucks. CNN sucks. Wes, oh, thank you, Wes. Thank you, Wes. Shout out, man. Leave a message. I like when you leave a message. Yeah, I'll leave it here, guys. If you guys enjoy the content, like, share. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. Thanks all. And when I get the opportunity, I'll slice some of the debate footage so we can talk about some of the debate itself, like specific things that came up in the debate. Because there's certain topics I want to talk about. It's the tariff thing is interesting, and the immigration debate is interesting. And when they were talking about immigration, I turned to my wife and was like, unless you're talking about our policies in South America, the immigration thing doesn't matter. And what do you know? Bernie Sanders brings about immigration policies in South America, meaning not our policies in South America. And, even the foreign policy questions. Like, how much can you say in foreign policy with like 10 seconds to say it? So, at the point where less Democrats are on that stage, which is going to be the case in the next debate, you might get a little bit more fuller debate. Hopefully, it is not held on CNN and is being held somewhere else other than CNN. CNN sucks. Just saying. Sanders' team need to come up with a strategy to deal with the media. And I think the strategy that they were using was just to call it out when they suck. You saw it a little bit on here tonight, and you also saw Fayez when he went on CNN and did it. I thought Sanders was strong in this debate, and I thought he was stronger in this debate than he was in a previous debate. And I do think he maintains, meaning he doesn't lose ground in this. I thought Elizabeth Warren did a great job. Is what it is. I'm just telling you what I saw. This is my first impression, my lasting impression. I'm going to have to go back and watch the debate again just for when I slice it, and I might come away with a different impression. But I thought she did a really good job. Williamson also did a good job in this debate. The interesting thing about this debate is that the centrists did everything they could to try to take down Medicare for all and everything else, which ultimately gave lefties a better chance to explain Medicare for all and literally push back on the people who are in the race. Delaney and those guys are essentially Joe Biden, meaning the centrist Democrats and the arguments that these guys are making to some degree is almost like a thing to Biden. But Biden is not necessarily, his polling is not based on reality per se, it's based on this notion of electability. I think that's somewhat of a slight thing that can fall apart. When you get to the notion of policy and everything else, the people select are Sanders, Warren, etc. So we'll see. I mean, the last poll by Emerson showed Sanders and Biden to have gained ground. Sanders gained 5 points at the last thing. He's been doing a damn good job. I think a lot of that came from the college stuff because he was able to gain 12 points just based on the 18 to 30 vote. I mean, and I think that's because of the college debt thing. So that's where we are. I don't think there's anything else. 33 minutes for a rundown. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to like, share, subscribe. Thanks all. Bye-bye.